Okay, hello. Hi, are we getting started now? Okay, well, first and foremost, thank you for those who attended. It's the last day, I know. But first, I would like to thank the spirits of the Viejas tribe for allowing us to come here peacefully and learn a lot. And then hopefully we pray and we ask the spirits that we all leave home safely with a lot of good memories and information. I would like to share with you a basket that I made here first. This basket here is made of clamshells, money, pomo money that I made myself, and milkweed and bulrush from Clear Lake. And I also hunted the feathers. And I weave this basket here so tight that I want to show everyone that it holds water. For the camera. That's my basket. And in the Pomo way, basketry is a form of healing. And the water to us is so precious. And the basketry is the tooling, was the tooling to talk to the spirits. And today they have a message for you. They would like me to tell you more about the Native American Fiber Program and the chemistry of SB 54, plastic pollution and prevention law. Next slide, please. Okay, this is my first time doing this presentation. This is a new role. So I want to give a brief presentation overview. And here's the introduction. I want to talk about Big Valley Pomo culture, the Native American Fiber Program, SB 54, plastic pollution and prevention law, and the $5 billion funding now coming available for tribal communities. And the chemistry of compostable plastics, AKA bioplastics, specifically polylactic acid, which is the most common plastic for single use and packaging now. Then we'll have question. I'll question you. The spirits will have some questions for you to create consciousness. And then we'll have a little bit of recycling quiz, and hopefully it lasts about 40 minutes of presentation time and then 10 minutes of questions and answers. So next slide, please. Thank you. So about me, I'm 43 years old. I'm an enrolled tribal member at the Big Valley Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians. Thank you to our tribe. I think some of us are members, Alicia and Sarah Ryan from our EPA department are online. Sarah is also the president of the EPA, Cal EPA here for the state. So I want to acknowledge them. I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in business from the University of Hawaii. I am the Northern California State representative for the Water Quality Monitoring Council. I'm also the state subcommittee for microplastics, the representative now for the SB 54 plastic pollution and prevention law for representing disadvantaged and rural community members that again will be ready for receiving some funding here. And then also I work for First Nations Development Institute, Business of Indian Agriculture. Maybe some of you have ever attended that course where we teach you how to write a business plan and apply for loans, grants, leases, and it's free. We provide free scholarships. So I also teach that course. So look into that also if you're interested in learning how to start a business, which where there, Pomo Bear Dr. Land Trust, I also started another business where I received 1.3 million to purchase an ancestral land property back. So to learn all of that, please go to the First Nations Development Institute Business of Indian Ag course website. And I'm also a board member of the California Tribal Fund. Have any of you heard of that? California Tribal Fund? Look into that also because we provide grants to tribes, usually around $50,000 to do whatever you want to help you. So look into the California Tribal Fund. I'm also the board member for that also. So it's good to know different tribes and advocate so funding comes easier to you. And then also I'm a basket weaver and hunter and roundhouse dancer. And I also like to acknowledge a person in this room here, Ethan. Could you please stand up? He works for his tribal EPA department. He's from our area, and he's also a roundhouse dancer. And our roundhouse, that's our ceremonial house where we dance. And the beautiful thing is that the songs from the environment, the nature, the birds, the sound of the wind, the water, how it ripples, we've captured those songs and created songs, dances from those sounds, from the birds, the plants, the animals, and the trees at our roundhouse, which please, all of you are invited to come. Next slide, please. So here's where I'm from, up in Northern California. Area. So we live close to the coast. We're here in San Diego, but we're way up in Northern California. And I live here more towards the lake, Clear Lake. That's where our reservation is. But we have a lot of family going all the way down to San Francisco, all the way up to Fort Bragg, the intermarriage, and how the intermarriage is related to the shells, such as the abalone or the monies discs that I showed you. So that the families, how we intermarried, a lot has to do with our coastal areas. Next slide, please. So I want to share some culture with everyone there. Here is a petroglyph of a pomo dancer. Here, right here. This is how our dancers look. That's been there. That the same dances, the look for over 20,000 years. There is a petroglyph of our dancers on the island of Lanai. Here, Hawaii. So our peoples travel across the ocean for who knows how long. No one really knows the age of that petroglyph because of colonialization. A lot of our oral histories were lost. But if you really think about the travel and how the Hawaiians went about it with the stars, and even the Pomos go about it, just following the animals, the humpback whale from California to Hawaii. That was the easy travel to follow that animal. So there's a petroglyph I'd like to share with you later or now. Next slide, please. So the presentation, it starts off really smooth here, a lot of culture and history, and then believe me, it's going to go up high. So here are my family gathering seaweed on an annual basis, and we clean it, we pick it off the rock, and we pick out every little bit of sand, every little seashell, every little, I guess, want to say pollutant. And it makes me think how our food system is now in danger of microplastics, ocean plastics. See, the beautiful thing of Northern California, the ocean is so clean up there in Northern California. And I hate to see our food system become damaged. So that plastic, how should I say, advocacy, it's really related. It goes deep historically into our daily lives as tribal people. Next slide, please. So one of the things I like to do besides the plastic pollution is help my tribe with NAGPRA. Is anyone into NAGPRA in this room? Yeah, see their hands. Good, good. So we like to go and help our tribe with repatriations, with travel funds to go to UC Berkeley because they don't offer travel scholarships. Those museums, those universities. So my program, I'll talk about later, will offer scholarships to get hotels, pay for travel, meals to go to universities so that tribes can go visit their ancestral items. So yes, next slide, please. There's a meeting in Fresno on Monday for NAGPRA. They'll be talking about law. You could join in person or via Zoom if anyone's interested, just to let you know. Next slide. So here's my program. I started this program, Native American Fiber Program. It's pretty new. We've been around for about since 2018, and it consists of tribal peoples from California, Montana, North Dakota, New Mexico. We support tribal communities with their traditional fiber, such as buffalo hide tanning and basketry and other textiles. and hemp fiber from the plant, the stalk, the woody portion. That fiber there could then be used to replace plastics. So we're a nonprofit organization, 501c3. I am the CEO. I started this program here, and we give out grants to tribes for those activities, traditional fiber, hemp fiber. And the tribes that we work with, they're very large into agriculture, where they have tens of thousands of acres, where they are trying to create these carbon sinkholes with their hemp. And yes, next slide, please. So here's some of their work that the tribes did back east. Rocky Boy is from Montana, and Turtle Mountain, they North Dakota. We supported their buffalo hide tanning projects, as you can see here. Next slide. And buffalo, that's back east, right? Here in California, we're like more deer, fox, and such. But that's the tribes back east. But then also they have their hemp. Now, where it starts to come together with the plastic now. These are two businesses, Indigenous Solutions LLC and Green Buffalo LLC, two tribal businesses that we help steward, and NAFP helped them provide grants, seed monies to launch. And now they're at a point where they're making these biocomposite materials, they're called now, where it's a partial plastic, where it could be 50% plastic, 50% natural fiber. And there's just some things in the world, like auto, industrial, where plastic, you cannot reduce it completely because you have to produce for humans to live. But how do you live? How do you go about it in a continuous plastic way? Plastic is not our culture for tribes. So that natural fiber, it is our culture. So trying to put it together in a way where it's feasible for tribal communities, both economically and environmentally. You know, there's challenging in coming together as an organization, all those tribes. It's easier to brainstorm and network and share ideas than to create. Next slide, please. Agriculture modeling. See, we're in California, we're not farmers, really. And farming is a colonialized activity, which included cattle and soybeans. Cattle is not our culture, right? In California, what is tribal communities' culture? Buffalo and hemp. So to put those two together, it creates agriculture modeling systems where tribes can get grants, like the Turtle Mountain got a $1 million grant to measure the amount of carbon sequestration for their buffalo hemp agriculture modeling system, which you grow the hemp for food, for seeds on top, and then the natural the stalk, the fiber, to make parts, to make widgets, something. So to try to determine which widget to create on a scale, a big scale. There's small scale at home, but then big scale, to figure out how to actually make a microphone. It takes a lot of science and engineering to use this new material, hemp. We had to go to a research center. Next slide, please. We work here at the Center of Bioplastics and Biocomposites, where you see my program, Native American Fiber. I work with all of those plastic producers and industry, Ford, John Deere, Ford, John Deere, Amazon, Medtronic, 3M. What I'm trying to say is the influence now to persuade them here at this research center, because you have to pay to get to the research center. Now to be at that research center, then to influence and persuade them to try to engage into a new material to create a widget from a new material, it is challenging, but then easy if you just listen to the spirits and you tell them the message. Therefore, a lot of these companies now are starting to get into hemp. Next slide. So what then we do is we get into projects. There's typically 12 projects that are funded, and the engagement in those projects. So we have 4 of them. We have this natural fiber, the second one, for under the hood applications. That's like the hemp car, under the hood applications. I'll show you a picture later. And then we have another one, bio-based coatings for water barrier properties. That's like a paper bag, a hemp bag. And then we have another one, utilizing the hemp hurd. How do we use the hemp hurd to make this, to make that, to understand it? It is an engineer, a PhD engineer from a 4-university system, North Dakota, Iowa State, Georgia State, and Washington State engineers come up with the research project then that we vote on. And we, again, for hemp, influence and persuasion to change the mind to look at something different, the world different. So then how do you go about that, though, too, is with the people. And that's where the inclusion of indigenous people lies here now. So I share that with you. Next slide. So here, the auto part made from hemp. How to go about that at the research center. That was with Ford Motor Company. So, but then everyone knows how the auto is going right now. Yeah, so that's really something else. So, next slide. Okay, so then NAFP, we engage those tribes with those Fortune 500s to provide their hemp to do those auto parts. But then also, that is the plastic. What creates these Fortune 500s to move away from the plastic is because of policy. I'll talk about that later, which is banning the plastic, right? So that policy here, we try to be very active, our organization with others that help the environment, that are more accountable for the producers of these plastics. So try to support being very active in the policy. That is where we are. So next slide. Okay, here. So lots of tribes now just have this natural instinct of managing and stewarding the land, but they understood that somehow these plastic producers stole our identity. Do you remember that commercial to the left? Yes, yes, your identity was stolen, right? So now you are owed something. You should be expected to receive and ask. You will get it now with this SB 54. So my program here, again, nonprofit organization, we're trying to get these tribes together, get involved this time around where the funding comes. So next slide. So here's my new role of this SB 54 plastic pollution prevention law through CalRecycle. I just want to show everybody, you always got to prove, right? Right here, highlighted. From a disadvantaged or low income community or rural area, Fred Briones, a Chief Executive Officer, Native American Fiber Program. You can look too on the website if you want to get more information, but I'm just showing you my new role. Next slide, please. So what is SB 54 Plastic Pollution and Prevention Law? So if you can see closely on the screen, I'll just read it here. On June 30th, 2022, Governor Gavin Newsom signed SB 54, Allen Chapter 75, Statutes of 2022 into law to address the impacts of single-use plastic packaging and food service waste. This landmark packaging law requires that by 2032, coming up quick, right, we cut by 25% single-use plastic packaging and foodware. We recycle 65% of single-use plastic and foodware. Make 100% of single-use packaging, plastic foodware recyclable or compostable. Now that word right there, compostable, like what does that really mean? 30 minutes. Okay. So what does that really mean? So that's where we're going to get into the chemistry of that compostable plastics. Next slide. But first, the funding opportunity. Let me read this to you. This is from the Surfrider Foundation. They're also advisory board member for SB 54. You can go to their website and look. SB 54 will protect and restore California lands, waters, and communities most impacted by plastic pollution by requiring producers to pay $5 million a year for 10 years beginning in 2027 and sunsetting 2037, $5 billion total in environmental mitigation funds. Up to 150 million of those funds may be collected from plastic resin makers. 300 million annually will go to address current and historical harms to disadvantaged, low-income, or rural communities from plastic production and pollution. 225 million of which must benefit residents living in disadvantaged or low-income communities. You see what I'm saying? Whoa, that's going to be a lot of money coming down to you, tribe. So did you know? Thank you for coming. So I could tell you, and then you tell others. Tell them all, because you can't absorb all that kind of money, right? But how can the tribes all go together at once somehow, or just approach this? It's coming up in 2027. A lot of money, 500 million a year, 225 million to disadvantaged or low-income communities. And I'm the representative. So I want to advocate for all of you. All of you. Try at least somehow, some way to go about it. So next slide. So we have a strategic plan. We'd like to get tribes into networking. We're going to have monthly Zoom meetings so tribes could start networking. And how we talk here, have presentations, presenters to talk and tell what they're doing so that we can continue the brainstorming and sharing of ideas and networking and eventually come together close. 2027, we're going to try to go up for 225 million somehow, some way, where NAFP could somehow be this granting organization where it gets funding from the state and then gives to the tribes in the form of grants. And there has been a lot of barriers where the accountability of tribal communities working with Cal EPA or Cal Recycle with granting opportunities, it was too gripping too tight. They have to understand that tribal directors work several hats. So to fill out all the paperwork in the form, it becomes too tedious. That's why a third-party organization comes in handy. So we hope to work closely with tribes. Visit our website and our Zoom meeting. Next slide. So here, what are compostable plastics, AKA bioplastics and plant plastics? So next slide. See, bioplastics are plastics. The plastics all around us are made from the bioplastics, as you can see here from the slide. And remember, the bioplastics, it is a compostable plastic. Same thing. Next slide. But then there's a lot of different types of plastics we'll get into, but let's read the definition of compostable plastics, also known as bioplastics. A compostable plastic is a type of biodegradable plastic which breaks down in specific composting conditions, either at home or an industrial facility, into biomass, organic and organic compounds, CO2, and water. So if you look up to the slide to the right, it shows all those widgets made from bioplastics. And what they're saying is that you either buried it in a composter, home composter, or an industrial composter, and it just suddenly disappears into CO2 and water. But is CO2 a good gas right now? We'll talk about that later. But then that is theory, how the science should work. But does the experiment always work in theory? No, it doesn't. But it is the law here in California that you must accept compostables. But let's go to the next slide. So these how our compostables are made. Bioplastics. Typically, they're made from corn. Start here for number one. You extract the starch from the corn, you create lactic acid. The lactic acid is then created to make these little tiny pellets. The little tiny pellets then go into a machine to make the hot mold injection, and then you make all the different items. Once you make the items, then they go here to a compost, right? Then supposedly, it breaks down into CO2 and water, and it's gone. Theory. That is the theory. That is the science. The theory. That is the science. That's how it should. They want it to work. But sometimes, again, it doesn't work like that. And then look at the end product, people. CO2 and water. Right now, CO2 is not a very good gas. And that water, our spirits, our leadership comes from water. I showed you the basket, that whole water. There's no plastic. Next slide. Those bioplastics, when I showed you the extract of the starch to make the pellets, there's all these different types of plastics now. No one really knows what type of plastics they are. So the most common plastics, if you look, again, is that PLA and PHA, or PLA and PPAP. But then you could see all the different types of plastics. It gets very confusing and very misleading. Don't feel confused, because it is. They set it up that way. And the thing is, when they do the extract, you could see polyethylene. Polyethylene from plant plastic and fossil fuel plastic is all the same. It is all the same. So it is, again, it's a little misleading. So next slide, please. So the compostable degradation equation. When you grab your piece of plastic and you put it in your home composting, it looks as follows. The word is, the key word, degradation, when the plastic breaks down. So the PLA, again, goes to CO2, gas, H2O, water, and then the little tiny microplastics, right, that still exists. And it still exists. So next slide, please. So then the microplastics really start becoming an issue, right, when it gets into our drinking water system. This is the Sierra snowpack where I live in the valley. That is our drinking water when the snow melts, and then we drink that water, right? Now there's microplastics in that, which has never been like that before. That's a human health hazard in itself. So we need to be very conscious around that. So next slide. So it draws the attention of all these other groups together, of course, as you know, the Pacific Garbage Patch, right? So that patch there, of course, then it includes a lot of bioplastics. And if you hear the word marine degradation, this is what they're talking about, where the plastic then just melts in the ocean into little tiny microplastics. Now that's not right. Those animals, those in the ocean, those are our family. They speak the language too. We must protect them. And that's the way some people think, those colonialized, the colonials, that they think the ocean is a dumping ground. Next slide. So then when you have that big piece of plastic, we're getting to the chemistry now. Large pieces of plastic, as we know, you put it out in the sun, it absorbs heat. When it gets cold in the winter, it in the heat, it releases heat. In the winter, it absorbs heat. So then here's our local news chapter man here, Mark. He shows this big heat spot out in the ocean. What's causing it? I don't know. Could it be this? Could it be? Just questions, science, thinking. We have every right to ask those type of questions and no demand. Next slide. So here's a general chemistry question. Is it acid into water or water into acid that causes the explosion? So remember too, those plastics, a lot of them are made of acid, and they're made to degrade into CO2 and water. So due to time, next slide, as a chemistry question. Look that up, please. So then these bioplastics now going into the ocean, is it turning the ocean acidic? So again, follow the equation, follow the chemistry. It's easy. The polylactic acid degrade into CO2, water, microplastics, and then create carbonic acid. That's what causes the ocean to acidify, is the carbonic acid. Is there a correlation? Perhaps. Questions that someone could research. Next question, or next slide. So here again, that whole food chain supply that we're in, we think we dominate it, but do we really? Understanding how fragile that ocean life is, we have to be very conscious and vocal and understand that a lot of it is the plastic pollution. When it breaks down into microplastics, it looks like that little phytoplankton. The phytoplankton are eaten by the little fish. The little fish is eaten by the big fish. You know the scenario. And then we eat the fish. And then microplastics are now in our bodies. Is that normal? No. Is that the new norm? Do we just accept it and say, okay? Or do you try to be active about it and change that way of life? Because tribal communities, a lot of this is connected to the food system. And here's where we have this opportunity to shine, because we had a food system, had a way of storing food, preserving food, and maintaining life. So bringing back that traditional knowledge and those thinkers, those type of people, is very important at this time. So next slide. So here, I have a message, a question here. The environmental policy, right, then causes business to shift. So next slide. So the easiest way to start a business, as it says, is to follow the law. What is the law? In 2030, EPA will require that 50% of the plastic is recycled. So if you own a recycling center, that means business will probably be good, right? But if you produce a plastic that is not recyclable, oh my, business looks bad, right? So, but then the replacement, what is the replacement to continue life? It must, right? So trying to figure that out. We need those people. So next slide. So here, as a sovereign nation, what do other sovereign nations think of compostable and bioplastics, right? Because you are a sovereign nation tribe. So what are other ones like Canada and around the globe thinking? Because here in California, you're supposed to, that is the law, follow the law. But what is the law in others? Because you have to think in a colonial view, how all those foreign countries extracted from California all our things, right? And that's how they got rich. So if you could think that business sense here, and visit that website. That is the website that all the plastic producers, they visit for the news. So let's look at the news. What do they think? Next slide. Let's look in Canada. Here, compostable plastic bags should be banned, Environmental Defense says. Co-op launches petition to save compostable bags. Oh my. Next slide. That's what they say. UK compostable plastic startups may have to leave UK because of ban. You have been banned, you see? But then business must continue. If you are a producer of a banned material, you're doing something bad, and also illegal. But then your business depends on that. You see their positioning, how fragile they are. So they're banning it. Next slide. Here, Australia. Victoria bans compostable plastics and bioplastics. Next slide. Here in Hong Kong recycling efforts undermined by confusion over handling of biodegradable plastics, says environmental group. Here at the end, they're making people prove that it is recyclable. You must prove it, that the plastic you produce is recycling. Because if you can't prove it, look what it says. A spokesperson added that anyone convicted of using false description for their goods or services could face maximum fine of HK $500,000, USD 63,000, and 5 years imprisonment. They're throwing people in prison in other countries now. That's really something else. But in the US, we're a consumer economy. Next slide. Here, look, Taiwan, across from China, right? Ban compostable tableware. Seems like all around the globe, they're banning these compostables, but in California, 15 minutes. Okay, next slide. EU, same thing. I'm just trying to prove a point because it's business. In business, you have to do your due diligence. And just like, what did the Spirit say? What are those other ones doing before you just say, okay, I'm going to do it? What are those other ones doing, those sovereign nations? And they're banning all the compostables. So to create attention around that. Go ahead, next slide. So in the California view, there's the governance, there's counties, governments. So in the state, it said to accept compostables, but then it comes down to local counties like Marin County, who have banned also, again, bioplastics, compostables. And here's a sign to show you what it looks like. So then that when you're a consumer, you go and make that type of choice that, hey, this material, it's questionable for the environment. Many, as I showed you, don't agree with it. So as a sovereign nation, again, you have to accept that. Next slide. Here is Attorney General Bonta, just a few months ago too, putting the pressure on these producers here to prove that it is recyclable, and to again raise that $5 billion from those plastic producers with the law policy for disadvantaged communities. So we're following the law. Easiest way to start a business. So a lot of these tribes too, you guys have EPA departments, solid waste departments, recycling departments. These are going to be opportunities to create funding for you. So off the law. Go ahead, next slide. So what does our president think, right? Our president, he says in 20 years, everything will be biomaterials. Could it be bioplastics? Could it be hemp? The battle begins. With bioplastics in 2030, if it can't be recycled, it could be banned. So there's going to be a big shift in business too. So to pay attention to those things, the law, the policy. Next slide. So we're going to go into a quick quiz, real quick. Can compostables, AKA bioplastics, be recycled? No, that's the reality of the world. That's how the cookie crumbles. I'm sorry. Next. Which of these items can be recycled? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a trick question here because they say all of them can be recycled, but think about it. Do you have a recycling center near you that can these be recycled at? A lot of these take big acid washing, chemical dipping facilities to reduce all these plastics here. So the future of that, really lies in the people's hands, and with the funding, hopefully the tribe can make their voices heard in this. And again, that's a trick question. This is a trick question. That's the whole recycling business and industry. It's very tricky. So being experts, I hope to, again, as a chemist, I hope to share my knowledge and network and resources with the tribes going forward at this. Next slide. Again, thank you. There's some baskets I made. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that presentation. Jenny Stevenson with EPA Region 9. I just wanted to offer one point of clarification. The 2030 recycling goal, it's a goal. It's not a mandate. So it's not going to be required, but it's a goal that EPA is setting forward and trying to get folks and communities to move towards, and then putting infrastructure funding to try to help support that. But wanted to make that clarification. Thanks.
Thank you. Wow, how quiet. I know there's a lot of questions, lots of things going in your mind. And really, when it really comes down to it, let's talk about it. It's the money, that amount of money. And I'm going to try to work my hardest so that you guys get that money. For how long now? Again, you had these recycling, EPA, solid waste departments now that have been underfunded. And we know how the res is. There's so much trash, not from our own people, it's from the other ones coming and just dumping now. Now that's not right. We got to stop that. And how to go about it too, it's just the funding. It's hard. Anyone else? Stop me because I'm just.
I'm going to, this is Willard Chin, GAP Project Officer. I'm going to offer a resource. If in fact the state has come out with an RFP in terms of how to apply for funding for communities impacted by plastic, if you could share that with us, email me or any of the conference organizers, or, well, I'll give you my business card. But we have a tribal newsletter that we can get it out, and we have a list server of all the environmental directors. So
I will, Willard, and let me tell the tribe right now. Tribe, see, they don't know how to spend down the money. They don't know. So what, see, that's the thing. You already do. But then how to go about it to get that much too is the thing. And it's going to take a lot of networking, like Willard just said, and read the outreach there too. So again, please come to our Zoom. We'll send that out so that we could talk about that and how to go about it, because you have 3 years. And I'm going to warn you, tribe, the spirits are warning you right now that they're already trying to cut you off. A lot of those universities and those consultants, they're going to say, go after those fundings and try and tell you how those monies are spent down. But in reality, you already know how to spend that money down, how to go about it. We're going to talk more. We'll talk more. There's 3 years still. So let's keep in touch. I have a thing. I should have done that from the beginning. You can write down your contact information. And I got more baskets over there. I'll put this one over here too. If you want to drink out of it too, you can. Because in the old Polo way, making a basket, it'll make your dream come true. A basket is a form of healing. So, make your dream come true. You like to take a drink. Trip you out. Right? Where do you ever see that? So that's why I had to do it to entertain the spirits of the us. So I'm going to put this notepad here. You can write down your contact information, and we'll keep in touch. I want to get to know you. I want to talk. Go walk in, listen to some birds, listen to the wind, listen to the water. Come to our roundhouse, listen to the spirits. So even go out to lunch. So, okay, I want to end it. Thank you. I will, Willard. Thank you. Yeah. I have some.